I had an opportunity to paint the piano for Diplo. And he was performing at the ACC, and I think MLSE was paying for it all. And, this is like, I think probably like 3 or 4 years ago. And they're like, yeah, we can give you $1,500. I'm like, at the time, I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. I need the money. And so I told my mom, and she's like, what? $1,500? That's it? And then she's like, you need to go back and tell them you need more. I go back, tell them I need more. I don't end up doing it. So they gave it to someone else. And so when I say measure the opportunity costs, you need to know, like, doing that at that time, that could have been a really good look. You don't know where things would take you. So I learned to be able to say yes until you can afford to say no.
Hello and welcome to the Hustle Over Everything podcast. To introduce ourselves as the hosts, I'm Alex.
And I'm Owen.
This is the podcast where we receive stories, tips, and strategies from entrepreneurs who've done it to help you grow your business and take yourself to the next level as a person. Later on the podcast today, we have Jordan Sook. Jordan has been featured in Vice, CBC, Complex, and more. He currently has 2 exhibits going on, or 2 projects, should I say. One in Union Station, and he has a life-size Snoop Dogg traveling every LCBO. He's on a ride right now.
Mm-hmm. Major things by Jordan, man. Major things.
For sure. So, Owen, what's good with you?
A lot is good with me, bro. Positive week. Started my new job yesterday at Vidyard as partner manager. Really excited about that opportunity. The past 2 weeks, we've been grinding things for Uplift Media. And man, we learned a lot this 2 weeks. What we've been doing, guys, has been we're meeting with a couple advertising partners, some big brands that you might know, like you will know about, and use them every single day. And we approached them for advertising opportunities, and we learned a lot of what it takes to work with brands as audio sponsors, especially of a show of our size. To start things off, bro, what is the first major thing that you learned from, meeting with these 2 meetings? There were 2 separate companies. One was on the extreme end. Hey, we work with these large podcasts with over 150K downloads. The other was like, hey, you guys are relatively yeah, we get it, but we can do more than just audio sponsorships. We can do a whole package. What was your biggest takeaway from doing these 2 meetings?
My biggest takeaway was the use of ourselves as our likeness, our personalities is more than just the podcast. We really have to focus on ourselves as creatives and the network we're building, and not just the audio podcast listens, because when it comes to just podcast listens, it's a struggle to get real podcast advertisers on there unless you have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of listeners. But if you focus on your creativity and your brand itself, you can still possess deals where people are putting you on billboards and structuring real significant brand deals. Also, we talked to Sean Anthony, and he has a successful podcast. He's a full-time podcaster, providing for his family, and he does it through Patreon. He does it through working and creating products for his podcast listeners. So there's different angles you can take here when it comes to monetizing a podcast. We have merch. Make sure you go support our podcast and purchase some of our merch. hustleovereverything.co.
Yes.
And there's levers you can pull. Once you have an audience, once you have people listening to you, there's other things you can do to make money. So at first I was a bit discouraged because in one meeting they were like, listen, you have this much? Okay, we're going to direct you to the agency where they can scope this out and see if it's worth our time. And then another meeting, we're ready to go. Go ahead. On.
Yeah, that one meeting was just man, we work with whales, right? And the whales, in the podcasting world, if you can picture a whale, you might know the Joe Rogan, the Daily Newses, the true crime podcasts that you see on the top 10 every single week. Someone like Andrew Schultz with Flagrant Fouls or Brilliant Idiots.
Flagrant 2.
Fragrant 2,
Yeah.
or Call Me Daddy, like those shows, those are the ones like that get through like corporate and you sit down with them and work a deal. But when you're like an up and comer like us, you're working with the agencies, they're integrating you into like a whole media plan, and you're just one of like many hundred shows that they're going to be working with, and you're getting a slice of the pie. So it was very humbling. It was very humbling to learn how podcasting works, because the thing about the industry, there's no blueprint to it. There's no textbook where you can go, okay, for podcast advertising, this, and that. In CPG world, okay, sales, product, Facebook advertising, build brand, build community. It's true and tested. It's been done before. But with this podcasting space, it's very new because a lot of podcasts are coming into space. There's only like the 5% of shows who are eating, and then the rest of us are working to remain consistent, to build an audience, to make it past 10 episodes. On average, every podcast that starts barely ever makes it past 10 episodes. So you have like the wannabes, and then the ones who truly are gonna-bes, which we are striving to become. This is episode 81 now, and we're like striving to get to that level. But this was a big eye-opener into how things work. And one thing as well too, like when you're working with these brands, like tell them everything about your podcast, like who you are, who your personalities are, because they're not really investing in your show. They're investing in you as people and how you can look in front of their customers or potential customers who they're looking to add to users as customers or users to their product. So, yeah, it was disheartening at first, bro, but we kind of saw that as like, man, there's the big leagues, and then we're like in little league world, man. Like there's the pros, like in a sense of like there's like, okay, there's like the all-stars, like whatever, like yeah, we're in the same league, but like there's different levels towards like tiers. There's like, okay, there's the LeBrons of the podcast, there's like the Jordans, there's like those people there who are ranked, and then we are like the ones who are working to get ranked. And to get the big dollars, it's like you have to show stats, right? To get a max contract, bro, to get the bag, it's like, bro, you have to have like performed over a certain period of time. So that was like a big thing. And it's not like we didn't know that. We knew that. But we felt that, or I can speak for myself, I felt like, you know what? We have a great brand. We have a niche. We know micro influencers are a thing now. We can get in. And we did get in with one brand. Not just about like working through that to really like hone in on what works. But the one company, it's pretty much how every company works. To get to that other company, it's like, it's not every company is going to want to like do a billboard, do like a thing, personality. It's like you really have to hit that, and they have to present that to you. But you going in is just like, you have to pitch it and see if they like it. But if they don't, most likely you're going to get like the bigger companies who want like the over 100K downloads per month over certain episodes and etc.
And that's just finding the product fit, right? The right fit for your brand. If someone's coming to you and saying, hey, I want the biggest podcast in the nation, then, all right, it's probably not for you then. But if someone's saying, hey, I want to not only work with you in the short capacity, but in a long capacity where we're growing together, you're becoming a champion of the brand to showcase how people use that product on a regular day basis, then you have a strong use case. And there's different levels you can pull, right? And one example that I want to say is that, if I have a CMO podcast, right, or I'm interviewing different CMOs, and some of them become leads for a business, right, and that lead turns into a 7-figure client, right, you just monetize their podcast, right?
Yep.
And now, who makes more money? The person that's continuously monetizing the podcast that way, or the person that has, brand deals worth 5K, 6K? From optic wise, it could look like that second person, but in the actuality, it's the person who has that CMO podcast because they're getting consistent big leads to their business, right? Mm-hmm. So you really got to look at it from a perspective of, what you're trying to do. Are you trying to grow a sponsorship podcast? Are you trying to grow a product based off ebooks, courses, services? So, and with that way, you can hone in and dive deeper into the offerings they're giving, right? Because one podcaster, I forget his name, but he got a ice cream deal where not only is he promoting the product on his podcast, but he's also doing it on his socials, he's also doing it on his newsletter, he's also creating videos for them so they can use it on their content. So that's like a bigger deal, still a podcast deal, but it's a more creative deal. So he can use it towards his podcast, but he can use it towards other things as well, right? So there's ways to go about it. It's a interesting business that you can finesse to suit your own, model. So you got to get creative.
And also want to add this, man. It's like podcasting, if you really look at it, if you step out of it, podcasting is now about positioning and sales. Because you have, every podcast is a sales business right now. Whatever you do, you are approaching, you're gunning for that advertiser. It's a sales thing. You got to sell them on your show if you don't have the stats of an all-star podcast that's like trending top 10 every single week. Positioning, CMO podcast. If you position CMO and you are a CMO yourself and you're talking to CMOs, you are only doing that to like build a clientele business. So I think what we're discovering now, bro, is that you either on two sides of the spectrum. You're using podcasting as an outlet where it's just connections and building a bigger business for yourself on top of what you already do, or you're looking to build a channel, which a lot of people are trying to do, where you're building an audience, you engage audience, and you're looking to eat off brand partnerships over a long time. So it's deciding where you want to be. And, I see us as the second one where we're building an audience of entrepreneurs and et cetera, where we can get a lot of different brands to work with us. And ultimately, bro, I want to say I feel like the content creation space is what the startup world was like in the 2010s, 2011. Like you come out with an app and you whatever. I think podcasting, creating content, that is the new tech bubble. That is the new, hey, you remember that app Yo? The guy you click Yo, you send someone a Yo and he raised $1 million. That's what podcasting is. And that's why everybody's trying to get into it. It's like, how can you build an audience? Everybody now is a media business. Every person, whatever your social media, you are a media company. The only question is, what are you going to do to get eyeballs on you? And that's what everybody's trying to figure out. And if you figure that out in your way, do it your way and go eat. And once you learn how to eat, you'll forever eat forever because you'll know what to do and you have people looking at you for a long period of time, as long as you keep creating and innovating and feeding your audience like content that they want to keep hearing or listening or watching or consuming over posts and etc. So everything is a content business now, just depending how you look at it.
Word, one thing Gary Vee said that was very genius is all the businesses now have to have a content front end and a business back end. So if you're a plumber, think about how you can have content in the front end of becoming the best plumber in the city or in your nation or state, and then having the plumbing back end to fulfill those services out. With that being said, man, let's hop into the podcast with Jordan Sook, man. I'm really excited.
The actual
about
podcast, we spoke about podcasting. Now let's actually hop into the podcast. Hustle over everything, baby.
Let's go. Hey, what's up, guys? To support this show for free, here are some main options. If you're on Apple, make sure you rate and write a review of our podcast. This makes a huge difference and helps support the show. If you're on Spotify, follow us. If you're on Google Play, hit subscribe and auto-download so you'll be notified and have a fresh pod ready to go when we drop. Lastly, make sure you share the podcast on Instagram or whichever social platform you use and tag us. On Twitter, we're at 24/7 Hustlers. On Instagram, we're at 24/7 Hustler. And on Facebook, we're Hustle Over Everything. And now, guys, gotta pay attention to this point. We just dropped a new newsletter. It's called The Underrated. It's a weekly newsletter that breaks down untold stories that highlight game-changing business strategies that shape our sports, music, and culture. It drops once a week on Mondays, early in the morning, to prep you for the week. So subscribe to that, and we'll see you in the pod.
So how many projects do you usually have on the go? Sorry, Al.
Go ahead. I was about to say something like that.
On the go, I mean, it's weird because I've like recently picked up this like habit of like having multiple projects on the go. It used to be like focus on one and continue, but then I got to the place where it's like one project could like drag on for like 2, 3, 4, 5 months. You know what I mean? And so like in the interim, you got to be doing other stuff as well. So, right now I'd probably say I have like 6 different projects on the go right now.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's serious.
It's pretty cool. I think, I remember like, I mean, back when I was younger, like Lil Wayne was like my favorite rapper. You know what I mean? And like the thing about Wayne is, he has so much like music, right? And he just like, they say I remember he had an interview and they're like, oh yeah, they say you have like, 450 songs unreleased. He's like 450. He's like, I go into the studio one night and I could do 10 to 15 to 20 songs in a night. You know what I mean? And so I took that idea of like just making a lot of art, right? And so like right now, I'm sitting on a scaled model for a large scale public art project that I'm doing, as well as I think 3 different collections that I haven't even put out yet that are just like stuff that I've like made. So, I'm excited to maybe do something with those, maybe not. It's like, it's funny because like by the time you get to put it out, it's like I'm not even there artistically anymore. You know what I mean? And so it's just like, by the time like y'all would have seen this project that gets, sort of put into the public, like I would have been 3 years older than when I first came up with that idea. So that's one of the things too, is like, pushing yourself to make great art. It like really like has to like sort of stand the test of time, and sort of like have a sort of transcendent feeling. So, I think that's something I'm looking forward to.
I was going to mention the whole thing you said about Lil Wayne, right? It's like even Jay-Z, he does the same thing. He doesn't write anything. Like when he's recording an album, I heard, he just goes into the studio and he just records it all in one take, right? Yeah. And there's like one, even in Magna Carta Holy Grail, right? Like he'll say like one thing over and over, like, I don't know if you saw those commercials, like when he's like doing for Samsung, he's like, and then he'll just like think of that one little beat and then he'll just come with bars straight for it.
Yeah, I remember that black and white commercial with him and like Pharrell and Timberland, I think, were in it. Yeah. Like, I mean, like, it's weird. Like, I think artists like have like different approaches, and like you could see like the parallel in like, musicians and hip hop artists and like visual artists, because an artist like Jean-Michel Basquiat would probably be more an artist like that, where you could just go and you have like, or a Picasso who just has like a plethora of work that just like I think when Picasso died, they said he had like, 10,000 paintings or something crazy like that. You know what I mean? So it's just like, or 10,000 works, whatever that is, but still it's a lot of work, So, I think of that and I'm like, I don't necessarily know if I'm that artist either. I mean, there's spurts and times where I can like hit those peaks, but I think based on the medium that you're working in, you're kind of limited to it. You know what I mean? Like you can't just one night like sculpt like, the statue of David. It would be like almost impossible, but I think that, it's cool like how art is interpreted now. And so, people can really do a lot with a little, but I think like, you find that energy more with painters, because like they can just be really inspired, especially like expressionists and abstract expressionists. They're like the ones that can just sort of like approach something from a non-technical standpoint and just let their mind go.
And that also like for art, right? Once you do like, for example, the 10,000 thing that you're saying, right? It removes like the whole thing about perfectionism, right? If you can like see like the caliber of art these people do, there's no such thing as like a finished project. It's just that you continue doing and doing and doing and doing. So it removes like that start-stop thing. Like if you grab a canvas and you paint, it might not be good now, but if you look back at it 2 years like from then, you're like, wow, that's a piece of art like that I can put up. So I think what I just realized from what you're talking about right now is that no matter what like craft you're in, like for example, as podcasters, we can make a bunch of shows and you got to detach your feeling away from it, because it's just part of the artistry of you as a podcaster or you as an artist, as a creator. I thought that's pretty cool.
For sure, for sure.
And it's a muscle, right? Like, once you keep working out that muscle, it just makes you become a stronger artist, a stronger interviewer, a stronger whatever it is, you know? So,
yeah.
So yeah.
Your brain is the muscle. It's great.
Exactly. So we haven't even introduced you to our audience, man. So let me take a second back and introduce you. So today, ladies and gentlemen, you know, one aspect of entrepreneurship we haven't really talked about is artwork. You know, usually there's 4 use cases for artwork. You know, you either love it, it's an investment, you want to increase your social status, or it's a gift. Today, we got a professional in the building. He's one of the biggest mixed media artists coming out of Canada. He's worked with big companies like Puma, Way Home Music Festival. He's worked with artists like Baka Not Nice, Just John, shout out Just John, and Castro Guapo, shout out Castro. And we mentioned some of his pieces have been acquired by some of the biggest artists in our city. You know, this is one little guy. I don't know if you heard of him. His name is Drake.
Yeah, he's just a regular guy from the block, you know.
Exactly. So today we have the one and only Jordan Sook. Jordan, welcome to the show, man. How are you?
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate this. I love that intro. That was great. That was really great.
You know what I'm saying? I'm trying out here. Trying to step it up a little bit, you know, step by step.
I see you. That's
pay homage.
Really, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So now, walk us through like the first time you realized that like art was something you wanted to do full time. This is what you want to change your life with.
I think I was probably like 23. I knew I wanted to do something creative. I think the moment like I knew I wanted to be doing something creative to a scale was when I went to the Kanye Yeezus concert. I think that was back in 2014. And I got to see his performance, and I had seen, different rap hip hop shows before, and I almost would compare this show more to like when I would go to the Prince of Wales Theatre and see like Beauty and the Beast or Lion King, and I saw like that level of artistry in that, but in like a hip hop show. But you know, this was Yeezus, so like wasn't even really hip hop, which was like so amazing to like really feel and be in an immersive sort of art experience. And so that was probably like the moment or the time when I said, like that's what I want to do with my life, or something like that.
All right, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry. What was I love the Yeezus concert series, man. Like, what were some of your top moments in that concert series?
Oh man. Well, so when he had performed, it was the second day in Toronto. So he had just done the Thursday night show, and so this is the Friday night show. And I think this is probably December 23rd, so the day before Christmas Eve. So it's already, the city's abuzz. This is 2014, you know, Christmas time. You know how the city is. And he did Bound, right? That one song. And, he, instead of saying, maybe we can make it to Christmas, he's like, oh, and it's 2 days away from Christmas. Mm-hmm. And then the song blended with this other song, and the beat became really familiar. And then all of a sudden you started hearing like the crowd really started to buzz. And then all of a sudden out of the corner, like this light-skinned dude in all white comes out, and it's Drake. And I think that was like the apex of the show, right? This is 2014 Drake. Everything's on a wave in the city. It still is, but this is when we were really on like the idea of potential and like what we could be, and so like I think seeing that was like really just like a life-changing sort of experience. You had to feel it,
Facts. All right, so from that point on, like, walk us through like the steps you were taking to like start building up. Like, what were some of the projects that got the ball rolling for you?
Oh man, okay. So, I mean, so I was still in school, and I had reached out to someone in the city, and that person actually knew someone that I was working with at the time. I was working at TD Bank at the time while going to school. And I ended up getting this contract with the city of Barrie to produce 50 garbage cans or something like that. And so I painted a bunch of garbage cans that were placed all over town. On top of that, then they, recommissioned me to do like 10 different electrical boxes all around town. And the thing is, this is a pretty common thing that happens in Toronto where there's a whole program administration for it, and, different artists put a bid in, and I think they would roughly pay every artist in Toronto now. I think they pay them like, I think $600 an electrical box. And, being in Barrie is not a small town, but it's not Toronto at all. You know what I mean? And so it had enough population where, you would be doing enough work, but there's not like a whole heap of artists really, coming out of there. And so my communication with them was sort of figuring out a deal where I pretty much did all the electrical boxes in the city. And, I was able to negotiate a price with them that at the time was like, hey, I'm making money off my art, like right off the jump. And so did that, started getting the ball rolling. After that, I did, an exhibition at the college there, Georgian College. No one bought anything. My friends came through. It was on the same day I think Raptors were playing a game 6, during the same time. So everyone was like not even really trying to even be there. It was definitely a learning experience, but it was like really cool, because like at the time, like I just wanted to like make art and put art out. And, there's no real curatorial direction to my show. It was just random pieces of art that I kind of like put together. Like nothing was the same, but yeah, I put those all out. And I think a couple months after that, I moved to Toronto. Born in Toronto, but now I'm moving there to live by myself. Well, living with a friend, and so we rented out a house that we had. Like he had one floor, I had another floor, so I had the basement, but it was a townhouse, and there was like some random 70-year-old lady that lived up top, and it was just like a weird sort of like dynamic. And so I'm in the house. He's an artist too, so I'm in the house. He's in the house. He's seeing someone at the time. I'm seeing someone at the time. So there's an interesting dynamic in the house. And there's some really foreign, Korean people that live next door. And, anyway, so, everyone does their art projects, whatever. But one day I'm in the backyard, mind you, spray painting. And, all of a sudden, they're like taking pictures of me, getting ready to call the cops, calling the landlord, this and that, because I'm spray painting in the backyard and they could smell it from their backyard apparently. But, I'm outside. So I'm like, I don't know what else you want me to do, Anyways, so not too long after that, I had to dip up out of there. Got my own space, with someone I was seeing at the time, and we were, in the east end of town. Now, roughly around now is when I did that show I did at Only One Gallery, which was Kid and Company. And so this is now, okay, my chance at doing like an actual exhibition. And of course, probably the biggest snowstorm of like, I kid you not, like the last 5 years, that day in February. Like my parents couldn't come. It was just a big mess, but a lot of people still came through and, sold a couple paintings. And then from there, just continued to do different group shows and connect with different artists, linked up with Just John. Roughly around that time, my big homie Cans, reached out, talking about getting pieces to different members of OVO and, how all that goes. And so I was doing paintings and for him, and they're going over there. It was just like an experience of just like really living that artist lifestyle. And at the time, like I was still working at TD Bank part-time, trying to make some extra money to like reinvest into my art and like, keep living. And then after that, the person I was seeing at the time, we broke up. And so I was back in my parents' place. And so now I'm at this place where I've done some stuff, but like I'm still not, close to where I want to be. And even so now, I feel like I'm just starting. But people kept, I'd be in Toronto every weekend, and I'd be coming down from Barrie, from where my parents were staying, to Toronto on the weekends and like staying at friends' houses. And people would be asking me, they'd be like, what are you up to? What are you saying? I kept telling them like, I'm getting a studio in the West End. And mind you, I hadn't looked at anything at that time. And I just kept telling people, I'm like, I'm going to be getting a studio in the West End. And then, I kid you not, the first place I looked at, found this place, and I consider it to be manifested. And, I got my studio in the West End. And since then, I've been, making art in here and, like I said, out of town as well. So, that's pretty much the long story short in a nutshell.
You manifested that shit, bro. You manifested it. So let's go back before TD, right? Let's go like the younger Jordan years, like teenage, high school, because it takes years to become a craftsman, to become an artist, to master your artistry. Walk us through those days. Like, what were you creating? What were you doing that led up to you being able to take that like masterful step where when you're investing your money in TD, things started like rolling for you?
Okay, so when I was in high school, I think I would have been in grade 11 at this time. I started this t-shirt company. So I actually applied for one of those government grants, those summer
summer company. Yeah.
And so I got the $3,000 grant to start my company. And so it was a t-shirt company called Arrow Addict. And essentially it was like, my art literally on t-shirts. And I remember in Barrie, there's this big event called Kempin Fest. And so I, reached out to the people running it, said, I don't have any money, but can I like have like a small table like somewhere, and they're like, yeah, sure, we'd love to help, and like I was literally right by the park on the water, and this is like one of the largest events, mind you, in Ontario. So a lot of people from a certain demographic come to sort of these artisan, crafty tent like summer things, and so I remember I had 4 different t-shirt designs, and I think I had 30 of every t-shirt design. And in the first day, I sold them all. And so by the next day, I had to get some printed again. Had some for the later half of the day, sold those. And I think over that weekend, I made a course of like $5,000, $6,000. And so, here I am in high school with like, $5,000-$6,000. I don't know how to run a company. I'm literally just, all I know is how to draw on a piece of paper. And it's funny because like I drew these drawings in math class. And so I took the drawings, brought them to the screen printer. He printed them on the shirts and they sold. And so that was sort of like the initial inception of like where that sort of like hustler's attitude sort of came from, was like the idea of like, being able to take my creativity and like monetize it. I've always been able to like somewhat figure out that bridge. And so, now it's sort of like having those experiences sort of help go forward from an artisan survival standpoint, I would say.
Yeah, those summer company grants come in clutch. I did the same thing with the t-shirt company. I did like my brand was called Recruits at the time, right? So it's more of like aspirational streetwear, athleisure. I did that like after Ryerson, and then, transitioned into like doing tech and apps. But man, like those grants are actually like, they do wonders for people who have ideas and just want to create something, man.
Yeah, man, for sure. Like, I think, the government, the things I would suggest if anyone's listening in the Ontario government, make those things easier for people of color who don't have access to be able to apply for. And they definitely need to change up the jargon on a lot of it. You know what I mean? I think the average person communicates on a 10th grade level. And so it's just like the people reading this are like, people with master's degrees and, college degrees. So it's just like, I think there's a bit of a miscommunication in the grant sort of sector right now, but hopefully that could change.
Yeah, it's a big gap, yeah. But man, $5K in high school is like
that's brand
$30,000, bro.
Yeah.
Yo.
I couldn't tell you where the money really went. It's like one of those things. It's like exactly what you said. It's $5K in high school. So you're just like, you're buying all these things and like, tutus, like you're just like, yeah, but I'm pretty sure I used some of the money to go to school after. But, I do know I bought a PlayStation 3 at the time with the money. That was one thing for sure. But that was what I also,
man.
Yeah, well, that was one of the learning lessons from that. Was like, you got to reinvest in yourself. That's like one of the first things I think people need to do before you can even like invest in like others, and you need to reinvest in yourself. So that was like the key lesson from all that was like don't take out anything until you're really ready to.
One thing I noticed as well is that you've come a long way in your exhibition. So let's talk about your most recent one. Then let's get into the business of art.
Yeah.
Walk us through, your piece with Snoop Dogg. How did that happen and come to light?
Yeah. So one of my friends and curators, Ashley McKenzie, she actually curated this campaign with 19 Crimes. And so they selected 3 different artists, one from Calgary, one from I want to say Vancouver, and then the other one obviously from Toronto, to work on this idea of like, paying homage to Snoop and like this wine coming out with the 19 Crimes Cali Red flavor. So that's kind of how that really happened. Ashley and I worked on a couple of shows actually before. She curated the exhibition that I was in at the Power Plant Gallery. I think that was back in 2018. And then she also curated the Manifesto Art Festival one year that I was in it as well too. So shout out to Ashley. But yeah, that's kind of how that all kind of came in. They selected me and I was able to deliver.
Nah, you definitely did. Go ahead, Owen.
Yeah, I was gonna say you snapped with that because I was looking at the video of that Snoop figure, and I have like a couple questions for you, right? First of all, did you ever get a chance to meet Snoop and say, "Hey, I made this amazing figure of you"?
No, I haven't, and like I would love to be able to, but no, I haven't. But I feel like I've met him spiritually because like when the statue was in the space here, I was watching this 4-part documentary on Netflix about hip hop, and Snoop was interviewed, and all the lights are off, so the only light is coming from the TV, but you're seeing like Snoop, but you're also hearing his voice come from the TV. So it was kind of like a metaphysical experience in that sense. Kind of like how they would have like the Greek sort of warriors and stuff like that in the temples.
Yeah.
It's like kind of that sort of feel there. But I haven't met him, unfortunately. I would love to and show him the piece, but pause. But no, I don't think.
Yo, and like, where's the sculpture now?
So it's out of Toronto now. I think it might be going to another LCBO location, maybe in Montreal. I'm not too sure. But it is on the move. And it should be, traveling around Canada, possibly. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. But yeah.
Sounds good. And one thing about that, right? Like, not to get into the numbers, but such a project like that, you created like a masterpiece of art. You sculpted this thing. You made it like really, really unique. I also saw like the corks you made. There was like different of them with different facial expressions of Snoop. So getting into like such a business partnership like that, what goes into like the breakdown of, what you would be getting? Like if you could say, hey, for sculpting, for this, and that, which gives you like that number, which will equate for the whole cost of the project for you to do, for you to like deliver to them?
Yeah, it's really hard to say, simply because of a couple of things. They usually give you like a framework of what they're sort of working in. And like, it's more like, hey, can we make this happen? Now, the one thing I always weigh for me personally, and I always encourage people is opportunity cost. And so that's like a big cost that people don't factor into their budget breakdown, in the sense of, if it came down to it and this project, let's say, cost $50,000 to make, and you were $2,000 short of making it. Let's say it costs $52,000, and let's say they gave you $50,000, for example. Is the opportunity of you taking on that project more or less than that $2,000 difference? In that you would pay, or depending on whoever, but someone would pay $2,000 to be able to exhibit that. And so that's always something that, like, I would always consider in terms of like the budget breakdown. Now, the thing to consider, with art, it's really interesting because you have to consider your materials. You have to consider, and materiality is a big thing, because sculpting something out of plastic and sculpting something out of clay and something out of bronze is, 3 different costs, right? So that's the first thing you want to figure out what that is. The second thing is the time that you're going to be putting into it, right? And what that looks like. I don't think that any artist should really be working for free per se, but they need to be able to budget their time accordingly. Now, I don't know how other artists work per se in terms of, this costs this based on this. I personally don't have a situation where I break down what it looks like in terms of this is my time for sculpting or this is my time for painting. I think more so on a project like a mural, you could probably do that a little bit better in terms of sort of budgeting out what that looks like based off of your time, because it's painting, so it's a little bit more lateral. But when something like this is into play, this is like months of planning and work that goes into it, as well as actual fabrication. So all those things got to be accounted for, and how you make it. One of the things that I find is there are foundries and fabrication houses that do that, but with this project, we actually built it in-house. And so we actually created a 3D printing farm, which was actually more inexpensive to do, and print the materials ourselves and fabricate ourselves, then outsource it. So those pictures that you see on Instagram and stuff like that, that's literally us there working on it with our small team. So shout out to the whole Jordan Sook Studios team, Theo, Viviana, for putting in a really good work on that there. But so that's kind of the breakdown. Is you want to consider your time, other people's time, the materials, and then obviously too how you're going to make it. Transportation and logistics also. Those would be like, I guess, the 5 things that I would say that factor into your budget breakdown, and then obviously opportunity cost as well. And I just want to throw in a quick story. So I remember, this is back in 2017, I had an opportunity to paint the piano for the
Frank Ocean Way Home Festival.
No. This was I think what's his name? Diplo. And he was performing at the ACC, and I think MLSE was paying for it all. And, this is like, I think probably like 3 or 4 years ago. And they're like, yeah, we can give you $1,500. I'm like, at the time, I'm like, yeah, that sounds great. I need the money. So I told my mom, and she's like, what? $1,500? That's it? And then she's like, you need to go back and tell them you need more. I go back, tell them I need more. I don't end up doing it. So they gave it to someone else. And so when I say measure the opportunity costs, you need to know, like, doing that at that time, that could have been a really good look. You don't know where things would take you. So I learned to be able to say yes until you can afford to say no.
It's all about leverage.
Yeah, something like that.
Stacking leverage, yeah. We always talk about stacking leverage.
But hey, listen now. Now they'd be lucky to have you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But
I mean, I'm excited to just be able to work with like different people, So whoever wants to work, like I'm open. You know what I mean? I'm here. I'm not a hard guy to get a hold of by any means.
no, I hear you. So one thing that stuck out to me, what you were saying, is like this is Jordan Sook Studios team. You know, you rarely hear about the team behind an artist. You know, in the mixed media space. Like, walk us through like the setup of an artist's team. You know, a lot of like kids don't really know that these people have teams, but behind them. So yeah, break that down.
Yeah, like it's like one of the things I think a lot of artists like having is like that mystique of like, oh, they created all this work,
Lone
like,
wolf type of thing.
yeah, exactly. Like Michelangelo did all that by himself, or like, it's I mean, I get it. He, in a way, he did come up with it all, but like there's a lot of people that go into it, and so I've learned from different artists that I've seen that have like large studios and different teams, and tried to like apply that sort of theory to like obviously a small scale, and so the team is consisted of like having someone like a technician who can sort of be the engineer to your ideas. So if I say I want to make a giant, spaceship that floats, he's going to ask, how do we do that? And he's going to break down what that actually looks like. So working someone closely in that scale to help deconstruct your idea so you know how to actually construct it. So in the example of Snoop, like, what are we doing? How do we build this? 3D printing, this, that, all those things. Also, you want to have someone for your communications. So managing, media relationships, as well as different outreach stuff as well. I think that's like super important to have someone to just be able to assist you with that, as well as planning, like, your logistics, as well as having someone to plan for your day-to-day operations or your operations. And then you also want to have someone to help you, just like be there present to do stuff, having extra hands. It's like one of those things where people are going to wear different hats at times, so my team is pretty diverse and flexible and has different skills. It's funny because like they all have like degrees and stuff and like, other stuff. So I think it's like really great.
And none of them use the actual degrees.
Well, no, they do, but
do?
it's like,
Okay.
It's nice to see them like travel and like do other stuff outside of like those degrees. I think art has really created like a vehicle for those opportunities,
I get you. Nah, that's a fact. All right, so now let's get into the business of it, of really art. So from an outsider's perspective, art is all about, how the price someone's willing to pay, and like what goes into establishing the value of a piece of art, that could be sold for thousands, in your opinion.
Well, one of the things I've learned, and like I find it to be true, is like, they say art's only worth what someone's willing to pay. And so, Hearst uses this example. He says if you have two rich guys who, have a lot of money and both want painting or something, the same thing, then all of a sudden it's worth a lot of money. I think when money is attached, people sort of it means that they value the work from a level that they're willing to take it on and take care of it, and they see its value in terms of what it means outside of just a monetary standpoint. I think what you're finding right now is a lot of people buying artwork to make money. It's being used a lot as like a commodity right now. So I think that you find a lot of that happening. But to actually value, one's work is really tough. Because I might see it as one thing and someone else might see it as something else. And, we could have a disagreement on that, or we can agree on that. And I think what you find is it's really just when one's work gets valued at a certain price point, it's because a collective group of people over a certain period of time have all agreed that these works are this amount. And obviously you have your auction houses, on that level of market with like Sotheby's and Christie's, and those works of a lot of dead artists and some alive go for like millions of dollars, right? So
Jordan, I want to ask you one thing. So we're talking about like value in art, right? So for example, does your name as an artist establish how much your work is going to cost? Like, let's say as a no-name artist, I can come in the game and I can create this masterful piece of work, and then it gets valued, let's say like $3,000, and then someone as an established artist, like you can look at the piece of work collectively, let's say like over 80% of the people think it's average, but he can command such a price. Does the name of an artist like carry weight into like the price of a piece of art? Does that factor into it as well?
Yeah, 100%. I think that's like that's probably the number one thing, you find like these mega artists who like they can pretty much sign something and like there's value attached to it, right? I think that's like one of the key things, but it's weird because there's a sort of cause and effect relationship, is that like you build your name off making good art, and subsequently you get to like make more art off having a good name. So it's kind of like it's kind of a weird thing, but I think that's why you see a lot of artists when they're successful, they're like in their 40s or 50s, because like they've been doing it for like 2-3 decades. So I think it's one of those things where it's just like art is so interpreted by different people that it's like I might like something more than I like another thing, but the value of the thing I don't like is more, and I gotta buy that one because it's worth more, And so I think like the name being attached to it is, a big thing that you find in art.
Because I'm looking at it like I can come in, let's say someone listens to this podcast one day, right? And it's like, yeah, I want to be an artist. So essentially like you're chasing this life of having pedigree, right? And then you're waiting for that like 1 year to hit where you can drop like one piece of art which you can sell for like several $100,000s. So I'm just trying to like look at it. I'm just thinking here out loud. Like, so what is the incentive for me to come into this? Yeah, I could love art, but you don't want to be like a starving artist. You know what I'm saying?
No, definitely not. Yeah. Like, okay, so there's a story of, I think Picasso was maybe, he was in France at this time because he left Spain, or maybe it was Italy. I'm not too sure. And he's at this coffee shop, and this lady comes up and recognizes him. Says, "Oh, you're Pablo Picasso," and he's like, "Yeah." He's just there. He's at the table, and then so she pulls out a napkin, and she says, "Draw on this napkin for me, and I'll buy it off you." Right? He draws like a bowl or something like that on the napkin, and so she opens up her wallet. She says, "How much?" He says, 20,000. Yeah, he looked her dead in the face and said 20,000. She was like, 20,000? I just saw you draw that there. He's just like, yeah. She said, I just saw you, it took you 2 minutes to draw that. I said, yeah. But he's like, but it took me X amount of years to be able to draw it in 20 minutes. In 2 minutes. So, I think, again, value is like, so fluctuative, and it's like how you view things, right? So in Picasso's mind, like that sketch is 20K easy. And like, I guarantee you now, someone will be like, that sketch is definitely worth 20,000. That's small compared to probably what it's going for now, So it's really what we as humans, we have this tendency to like, okay, we agree on this and that this is, important. So I think in the art world, it's like, okay, enough people are like, this artist's work is important enough that we want it to support it, you know what I mean? And they facilitate the infrastructure of that artist being able to create more artwork and stuff like that.
So it's kind of like it's like with any art, right? As a musician or whatever, you gotta establish your brand. Like you gotta establish like your mystique. I feel like art's all about mystique, right? So like the more mystique you are, like the more perceived value it looks like you have.
I maybe, I mean, like, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, I think like that might be a thing you like people pick up, you know. I think artists they have abstract personalities a lot of times. Maybe that kind of comes off as being mystique, but in reality, like a lot of us are just like weirdos, you know. I think I personally, like, I identify myself more as an athlete. So like, you know, when someone like interacts with me, that's probably not necessarily the same interaction as like they have with an artist who's like usually like painting in their studio all day, you know. And I think it's really just, you find maybe certain personalities in art. You have introverted artists, you have extroverted artists, you know. There's some artists that will do no press, and there's some artists that will be, you know, looking to do press at all times, and different things work. For example, like someone like Banksy, you know, one of the most successful artists, you know, living right now. And, you know, it's the mystique of Banksy, you know, that like perpetuates this narrative. And then, you know, obviously I think he's making some pretty cool stuff as well. But, you know, it's really, again, what the society views that to be as.
No, that's a fact. That's a fact. So I want to break something down just for the people who are listening that might be, you know, beginner artists, you know, painting in their condos during the lockdown, during the Panda Bear, you know, like
Panini.
They're through the Panini. You know, what are some of the panorama? You know what I'm saying? That's a fact. So they make the first paintings at home, and let's say they get reposted by, you know, the artist themselves. Like let's say they make a sketch of Kid Cudi, and Kid Cudi reposts it, and they're like, "Yo, I'm on my way." You know, like, "Yo, I'm gonna do a gallery now."
One retweet straight to the gallery.
You never know. You know, you never really know. And I think it's funny because like everyone's story is different. You know, I've had that experience, but it doesn't work out that way. I think it also depends on where you actually are in your art career. For me, like that stuff happened when like I was in like year 2 of making art. You know what I mean? So it's just like, I think it really depends on where you are in your career and if you're ready to, sort of like be in a certain place. I think I know for myself, like I was making art during that time, but I didn't know about art. You know what I mean? Like I haven't really had a relationship with art at the time. Like I'd like almost like slept with art, but I haven't actually like been in a relationship with art, you know? And so that was one of the things that, you know, once you get to like understand a little bit of art history, as well as like why things are made and how they're made, you know, that changes like the type of art that you do make, you know? And so, I can totally say to any artist that like, if they get that look, then definitely take it. You know what I mean? That's like always like exciting, you know, but unfortunately, I don't think it happens necessarily that way. Unless, like, you know, I mean, maybe like Diddy just is like, "Yo, I'm gonna buy that for $1 million," you know, and then you're like making waves, you know.
Then
so
you're lit.
yeah,
then you're in.
So, then you're in. You're in. So it really only takes one. You know what I mean? So
like with anything, any business, it just takes one idea and you're off.
Yeah.
After doing many ideas, yeah.
That's a fact. But you know, for the average person, you know, that's painting, and all right, I know my paintings are good. I want to get them seen. I want to get them sold. What are some actionable steps they can do to start building an actual business for their artwork?
Okay, yeah. So one, you definitely want to get a website up. That's like the first thing. You want to get a website up. You want to be on Instagram, and I guess TikTok is the thing now. But I think the curation on TikTok has to be a little different if you're an artist. And it depends. You know, one of the things I've learned is figuring out the type of artist that you want to be. For example, the art world is really a lot like a bunch of art villages, in that there's digital art, there's sculpting, there's, you know, post and like it can get to very niche markets, right? And niche places. So you need to figure out like where you fit in. You know, if you're a painter, okay, are you painting with acrylics? Are you an oil painter? Or, you know, if you're drawing, are you using ink? Are you using pastels? You know, so figuring out where you fit in first and then kind of going from there, you know, being someone like myself, I identify as a mixed media artist, you know, being the fact that like there's nothing that like I won't touch, you know. And so I think for me, that's probably going to be like the more common thread you see with artists, you know. But I think the first thing to do is figure out where you are, and then from there you can sort of brand yourself. So, you know, website, you know, Instagram, and then also too like connecting with different people in the art scene, I find is like another big step, you know, other than putting yourself online. I know it's COVID and stuff like that, but being able to connect with others and just like, you know, check out another artist's studio or, you know, get to see someone else's work. It just like, it keeps your brain going. And then like, you know, you get to become familiar in the art space.
You mentioned about connecting with people in the art space, right? And early on when we were talking before, we spoke about the inclusivity of art, like how it's like very, you know, like if you're not an artist, when you think about art, you think about it's like high class, prestige, like snobby a little bit. You mentioned about Yahya Kasumo, one of the people who was able to start as an outsider and then became accepted within the art community. Expand more on that, right? I think this was an interesting thing, especially you as like, you don't come off as like you said, you mentioned you're an athlete, you're not like an artist, right? But you create great work. So what goes into that acceptance process into like this art community?
It's crazy because like, I don't feel like I'm accepted in the art community yet. So it's just like, I can only speak to, what I've gone through. But one of the things is, you know, perception is a key thing, right? For example, like a urinal in a gallery versus a urinal in a bathroom, it's two different things, right? And so how people perceive you is like very important. And I think even more so how people perceive your work. So that's why being in like the right spaces, that will allow your work to be seen in the best light, I think is important, right? I think early on, you know, when I was starting doing shows at like Blank Canvas, Twist Gallery, you know, different things like that, different like pop-up things, it's cool, right? And you connect with a certain audience, but you find that like a lot of people, especially like in the quote unquote scene, are not really in the art scene in the same way. And you want to like kind of filter out who's out just to like, you know, be out, and more so like find your like actual art lovers, you know? Yeah, that's what I would say is like, you know, being accepted is like, it's interesting. It's definitely an interesting thing. I think, you know, it's how people perceive you that's important, and how you present yourself that leads to that acceptance. I think, you know, having proper documentation, proper photographs are all important, you know, making sure that, you know, if you're sharing your work with a gallery or someone or curator, you know, that like you have a good art statement or an artist bio, and, you know, pretty much that like when they look at your stuff, they're being able to look at you for an artist and not for anything else, you know. And I think how they perceive your work needs to be in a very digestible and presentable way. You know, it's like when your mom would say, you know, put yourself together, you know, it's because of like it's exactly that same reason. So, yeah.
Did you, is there like a moment you had to learn to do that? Like when you came in, were you doing that right away, or what was that transition to realize that? Walk us through that moment where you realized this was the best way to go on about things.
Okay, so literally 3 years ago, probably like 2-3 days ago, one of my business partners, David, sent me a screenshot. So I did this installation with Ace Hill at the time.
Yeah.
And they weren't paying me a lot of money. I think it was like maybe like, you know, $1,500, nothing too crazy. I did this installation with like these TVs, right? So I did this installation with these TVs that I painted, and I kind of assembled them in a weird way. I had like these wires hanging out. It was just embarrassing. It was like, yo, like
It was amateur hour.
Amateur hour at the finest, bro. Like, I kid you not. Like, this was probably like I remember painting the TVs the same day of the installation. So that's how you knew it wasn't serious. You know what I mean? Like, I'm there, and like I'm loading TVs up into the back of my car, bringing them down from Barrie to Toronto. And I'm just like, you know, the car's like sitting so low because there's like 6 heavy, big old TVs in there, and they're still wet, you know. And so I get there, and, you know, one of the directors from Ace Hill, like, he just looked at me, he couldn't even look at me in my face. Like, he was so upset. Yeah. And, you know, with my, partner Dave, I'm like, yo, one of these people are going to pay us our money. You know, I'm not making really any much money at this time. And I'm like, yeah, when are we, going to get, this money? He's like, yeah, I don't know. Probably took him about 2 months for us to get that little $1,500 there. Simply because like they were not feeling the installation. And so,
but they were contractually like they had to pay up.
Yeah, but what was I going to do? You know what I mean? Over like, you know, to go after $1,500 is like, you know, it'll cost you $1,500. So, you know, it's not much you could really do in those situations, but they eventually did pay. But yeah, and we haven't really associated since. I remember I went to the event and they didn't even want to let me in. I was just like, how dare you? You know what I mean? And so, yeah.
That's crazy, bro.
Disrespect.
Yeah, you know, it happens. It happens. Yeah. You know, I think one of the things, like, for me is, like, I'm, like, pretty good at, like, taking no's. And I think that's something you have to get used to as an artist is, like, if you think of a baseball player, if someone's, like, batting at, like, you know, 400, 500 or whatever, like, that's really good. You know what I mean? Meaning that they're hitting, you know, like, what is that, like 5% of things or whatever they're hitting. So it's like, it's tough, you know, but I think that like people don't really look at the failures, right? They look at like your successes. And so, I think that, you learn from those. As long as you can learn from situations like that, that's what I would recommend to anyone. So for me, like that was the moment where I was like, okay, I gotta like start looking at how I put myself together and present like both my art as well as like, you know, the brand and stuff like that. And even now, like, you know, it's a constant refining of like, you know, sharpening yourself up right now. Like, you know, we're redoing the websites and stuff like that so that we're always like, you know, showing ourselves in the best light. And I think people underestimate like, what that's like. It's just like, why would you rather buy that Nike shoe for $150 when they have a pair of Skechers right there that'll do the same job for $45? You know? And so that's exactly what I would say.
All right, so you brought up something that was interesting is like the installation game, right? Because you've killed that. You've done installations for Puma, for big weed companies, right? Walk us through the process of getting like from first email to the bag. Like, walk us through that because like
a lot of emails.
I bet.
Yeah.
I bet. And like, what can someone expect? Because, you know, an artist is like, yo, I just got hit up by Nike to do this installation. What should they expect when they, you know, start that process?
So there's like 2 levels to it, right? So one is like if you're reaching out to them and if they're reaching out to you. Obviously one is better than the other, right? If they're reaching out to you, you know, it means like they've obviously done some research already on your work, and like they're interested in working with you clearly. No, it's funny because I have gotten like, from like these smaller, like, you know, magazines, for example, they'll be like, hey, do you want to, submit to maybe be featured in our magazine? You know what I mean? I'm just like, well, then why did you reach out? Like, you know, so when they're reaching out to you, it's usually a good thing, right? That's the first step. usually you'll be dealing with someone, usually from an agency. So oftentimes, if you're gonna, like, for example, the Nike themselves, unless you're talking with some high level execs, which by then you're probably doing more of a national level project, and you're like probably on like the Virgil levels of the world, but usually on like a scale that you've seen me work on, you would work with an agency as well. So Nike will be like, the agency X, find us, a dope artist to help us achieve these goals. And the agency will either have a curator that they work with, or will have someone internally that will be able to source and like hunt for artists. So that would be the first thing, is like establishing who your point of contact is, because you and this person are going to develop a little bit of a relationship over the course of the project, depending on the complexity levels. And oftentimes, that person has people on their end that they have to coordinate with and something like that. And so, based on the sale of the project too, that's why I mentioned earlier, you want to have someone, on your team that does work with media and public relations and things like that to help coordinate that. Because if you're making art, right, there's only so much of this other stuff that you can do before you, dry yourself thin. So, depending on the scale of the project, you would need someone to support in that. So, the first step, like I said, connecting with your point of contact. And then from there, you figure out what they're looking for, if it's something that's even feasible or even plausible. And then, they kind of give you a breakdown of what it is. And that's where you kind of like have a little bit of room for negotiation. If they say, okay, our budget is, $1,000, right? You might be like, okay, this is what, if you want this is what it's going to cost. And you might come at them with like, hey, so it's going to cost like $1,500. Can we make this work? Want to work with you guys? You know what I mean? And oftentimes, like, you'll be able to go have that back and forth, especially if it's something that they've reached out to you for. Now, there's sometimes obviously like open calls where, people would have submitted something and then someone gets selected, and like, things like the budget as well as the timeline is already like identified and sort of blocked out.
Big gems. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen.
Just drop some heat. The blueprint.
Facts. So working towards wrapping up, man. Let's wrap on the Union Station exhibit. One of your biggest projects to date. Tell us about that. So the project is titled "Thank You for Keeping Us on Track." It's revolving around the idea of unity and partnership within the Black community, especially the Canadian Black community. The Black porters that served on the railway between the late 1800s and the early 1900s, and it was a role that was really defined and carved out for Black men, but it helped to establish sort of like the middle class of Black Canadians, and these guys would eventually form one of the first labor unions in Canada that opened up opportunity for other minority groups to form their own labor unions and stuff. So a major contribution to Canada. So when you see the piece, it's 15-foot tall sculpture of a bunch of hats sort of piled on top of a plinth there. And each hat's been sort of textured with this sort of stucco-like material. And the hats are all black, and it sort of looks like asphalt or concrete or coal, and those are all symbolic of structure and ingenuity and forward progression. And as you know, coal was used on the trains during those days, and it gives something for the viewer to kind of think about what was powering the train at that time. And so drawing those parallels. But my largest piece to date, currently up at Union Station, Toronto until May 31st. So if you get a chance to check it out, check it out. It's open to the public. And I think it's actually one of the only exhibitions that's actually open during COVID. I mean, like, I don't mean to brag, but that's pretty cool. Like, that like even amongst this COVID that we can like still be putting out artwork. So
still out here. Yeah.
Yeah. you know, in these streets. So yeah,
That's fire. So y'all make sure y'all go check that out. Yo, that's how that cut you guys off? That cut someone off?
No, you're good, bro. You're good.
no, you're good.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So y'all make sure you go check that out. If you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe to us. And where can people find you on socials, man?
At Jordan Sook, or you can go to my website www.jordansook.com, and also check out Jordan Sook Studios. That has like all the studio content, behind the scenes, you know, how it's made. You can like literally see all that stuff right there. So yeah, check it out.
Boom.
Sounds
And with
great.
that being said, the hustle is what you can control. So control your grind and control your life. I'm Alex.
And I'm Owen.
Sweet, and I'm Jordan. Thank you.
Hey.
Hey.
And that's hustle over everything, y'all. Peace.
Peace out, guys.
Thank you so much for listening. The conversation continues on our Instagram at 247hustler. We post very frequently. And be sure to check out our merch at hustleovereverything.co. We have some amazing sweaters, hats, mugs, and a lot more. Lastly, our Proud to Pay program is linked in the description below. Thank you so much for your support. Talk to you next Monday. Peace.